what a day! What a lovely
Welcome
day!
to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using stock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Arwin, Righteous Force, Refracted Curvature, 10th Man Rising, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello, hello, good afternoon.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey,
good afternoon.
Good morning.
Want to respond?
You want to refund for
YouTube is
what?
getting in the way again. I mean,
I don't think this
literally
panel is
had to
Stop,
go
everyone. It's the
manually
start of a live
to
show.
Nathan's channel, and then when I got there, then I got the pop-up notification. Oh,
Okay, I didn't really understand that, but that was good. We were discussing racism in the pre-show. Did I say that correctly? Racism in the pre-show. So if
I
you
don't
wanna check
think
that out,
this
there's a-
panel is diverse enough.
I don't know, it's me. I'm black.
why not?
What do you want?
It's-
Anyway.
it's a one.
I'm a trans female lesbian who presents as male, so you can't say that.
Yeah,
It's
very
a
diverse.
wonderful
Black Muslim
panel.
helicopter.
You identify as a helicopter? There you go. How much more diverse do you need?
A black
Anyway.
Muslim helicopter.
Do you experience Coriolis deviation?
Okay, can we move on from the race bit now we're in the live show? Allah be praised. May the many arms of Ganesh embrace you all. Jesus saves. Let's move on.
Only one true God.
There's only one true God. All of the other, whatever they're called. Right, today, I think we've already got a video lined up by you, 10th Man, is that right?
Yeah, sky's falling up.
Okay, so obviously moving on with the same theme we've been on these response videos for about the last 5 or 6 days. This is obviously going to be gravity themed in terms of the up at 9.8 meters per second that the ground's claimed to do, I assume.
What's the video called?
It's,
Gravity.
gonna have
Heavy.
February.
it's gonna have a great ending.
Oh, okay. It's 22 minutes long. There's no way we are going to get through 22-minute video.
No, you just don't ramble on so much, but gotta go to the end.
I've got to. Okay, well, you're going to have to give me timestamps because there's no way we're going to squeeze a 22-minute video into an hour-long video. Because I've got to
Nah,
respond.
just review it for
Hey,
4 hours.
just-
Hello,
Yeah.
live show. Yeah, I have to respond. I have to pause it every 10 or so seconds.
Do
Otherwise,
it.
it's liable to get the channel copyright and struck.
So pause it, but don't say as much.
Is that the rule in the like? I want to like specifically the minute count because I've seen people talk for like maybe like the video will go on for a good minute or two and then they'll talk for like 30 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's not risk it.
I've seen Morgile be taken for a copyright strike based on about 6.5 seconds of Disney material. Now, I'm not suggesting that 6.5 seconds is the limit. I'm just saying there is no real limit. It's whatever is imposed by whoever who is imposing it and whatever they can get away with. And I don't want them to get away with anything. Therefore, I respond a lot. We'll give it a bash.
Nathan, in context, this could be a 2-day show. Don't worry about it.
I didn't say I was worried about it.
No, just do what you're doing. And if you finish, you finish. If not, we'll continue tomorrow. Just do what you're doing. Keep your channel safe. Just do it.
Stop stalling, get on with it.
Excuse me.
Get to work, Nathan.
I was tempted to do housekeeping first because we haven't done a complete housekeeping and we should actually go through the housekeeping
agree.
questions at least once.
Nathan's a union guy.
A union guy? What does that mean? I'm hearing a lot of stuff that should be
That
known
means-
by me. I'm
that
sounding very
means-
dumb today.
That means you apply to union rules.
I didn't catch that, Neil. Say again.
That means you follow the union rules.
There are no union rules. If there was a union, it can't be union. I can't individually be unionized. Can I?
Your panel is very
Be a-
unionized.
Could be
Why
a
not?
unicorn.
Okay, right. Let's just.
Oh my
Housekeeping.
gosh, hurry up. This
This
is
is a
getting bad.
terrible start to the live show. I've got to be honest. Sensual Goat, thank you very much indeed for the super chat. He says the response video is a great idea and very well executed. I don't know about that this morning. Hasn't got off to a great start. Are we going to do housekeeping or not? The whole point of the show, for me, is to disseminate that information, the housekeeping information. Response videos are great and all, and I really appreciate the super chat for doing them. And lots of people have been supportive, although the numbers haven't really gone up very much. In fact, they've gone down. But there we go. I think.
Do housekeeping and then response videos. It's simple. Just get on with it.
Well, why are you so keen? Don't worry about it. We can do this housekeeping tomorrow.
I didn't say we
There
could
are
do housekeeping
1,783
tomorrow. I said you could
videos.
do
People can
part
get
2 of the
housekeeping
show
questions.
tomorrow.
Check it
I
out.
didn't say how.
Getting heckled from the sidelines. There's loads of videos. They've all got housekeeping. We don't need it again.
I say do housekeeping and do the show, and if it needs a part 2, do housekeeping tomorrow and finish part 2 tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm keen to
Come on
discuss
with the
whether
show.
or not we do housekeeping for another 4 or 5 minutes. This is gold material. I mean, why
You're a
not?
troublemaker, man. You're a troublemaker.
The lore of physics has it that, in 1589, Galileo dropped different masses from the Leaning Tower of Pisa. To
Did he drop gases? Did he drop any gas-based masses?
demonstrate that all
Oh, wait,
objects,
wait.
regardless
Oh, we're getting heckled already. We're only 11 seconds in 10th.
But because maybe perhaps you can ask the housekeeping questions as they become relevant in this, if they do. That's all.
Oh, that sounds easy. Well, you can do that, Eli. When you hear a relevant housekeeping question that should be asked in response to a random gravity video, then you feel free, man. You be my guest.
Any evidence of gravity with that?
Any...
No, what is math?
There you go. There's a relevant question. There was 2, one after the next. You know, I take it all back, Eli. There's 2 relevant questions that sit in housekeeping, right? I heard Neil first. Hold that thought, John. Can you just repeat your question, Neil? Perfectly relevant. And kudos,
What
Eli.
is gravity?
Yeah, is there any scientific evidence of gravity? So we're automatically launching this video off with an idea of a Newtonian concept. Well, we ask on a daily basis for scientific evidence of gravity for a reason. Because if there's a phenomena that we're experiencing called gravity, then there's a methodology that can establish cause empirically. It's called science. Hence we ask for it, because this will be palmed off at some point in this video with some scientific vernacular, no doubt. But there isn't any. This isn't science, to answer Neil's question. Right, moving on. John, equally pertinent.
What is mass? Because it's nothing physical. It's a mathematical ambiguity. It's equivocation between inertia and mole. So what is mass?
We've got resistance to acceleration being one set of definitions that you can find, and we've got the amount of stuff in something defined as a mole, if you want to qualify it how it's defined in mathematical terms. So we've got a quantitative amount for an amount of stuff in some other stuff that we qualify with. I don't know, it's cesium or something. Probably not. That's what we were discussing the other day. I've forgotten the actual material that they used to qualify it with a mole. Anybody know off the top of their head? Because of course we're all going to know it's general knowledge what moles qualified with. Anyway, the point, let's not dwell on that because I don't know. It's equivocation fallacy, exactly, John. So you've got 2 different definitions used in different contexts at the same time for the same word. So mass, what the hell's that?
of their constitution, accelerate at the same rate towards the Earth.
Does gas have, in quotes, air quotes, mass? Well, in their world it does, yes. Right? Gas has weight. Well, okay. Gas go down, go boom boom, like these balls. No, gas doesn't behave that way. Do these balls behave the same way if you drop them in the medium of water? No, they don't behave that way either. So we're talking about specific relative density disequilibrium at the top of this tower, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and the disequilibrium returning to whence it came, i.e. perceived equilibrium, fall arrest, whatever you want to call it, after the balls have been dropped. But they had to get up there in the first place. Quite a lot of energy was involved in doing so. And then they displaced the air that they were pushed up through when the energy was involved to get them up there. So what we're talking about is displacement of air.
An experiment which would help inspire new
I don't know, you guys can't see in the G+ panel, but they just literally showed a ripple of water for the transition. How appropriate.
laws of gravity.
Okay, so we are literally going to be a 3-day show. Law of gravity. No. It was never a law. See, laws describe things that occur always. Right? Laws of nature. For instance, energy cannot be created or destroyed. Right? That's a law of nature. It'll always change. It won't ever be created. It won't ever be destroyed. Law of nature. We can observe that always. Hence, it's a law. Gravity, this notion of mass, what the hell is that? Attracting mass, whatever the hell that is, isn't a law of nature. You can debunk it with gas behavior. Gas, in their descriptions, has mass. Is it going down, go boom boom at 9.8 meters per second? No, it isn't. Furthermore, it was superseded. Oh, go ahead.
Hey, that
He
was
also
all
said
an
experiment.
Yes.
Yep.
In unison.
Yeah, in this context, experiment requires a natural phenomenon to observe.
Indeed. Hoisting some balls at the top of Eiffel Tower and dropping them isn't a naturally occurring phenomena.
But it would take over 300 years and a little prodding from Einstein.
What? How has Einstein got anything to do with this? He superseded this. I was about to go on to say that Einstein superseded it. Was it 1915? No, definitely not. He superseded it. He didn't give it a poke or a nudge along. He worked in a completely new geometry.
For physics to realize that this interpretation...
Sorry, physics doesn't realise things. Physics is the study of the physical. That's what physics is. It's not got a brain. It doesn't have epiphanies or realisations.
was wrong.
Sorry, he realised they were wrong. No, we realised they were wrong with gas behaviour. He came up with a new pseudo-geometry.
Indeed, if Newton and the theorists of his era had looked a little more deeply into their...
Or if they'd have done a bit of experimentation, i.e. true science. Theorists? Sounds like they're developing theories. What, like scientific theories based on validated experiments? No, they definitely weren't that, but this word makes you think that they're far more valid than they were at the time, when they were being punted as quote-unquote theorists.
Their own laws.
Their own laws. No, laws of nature describe things that happen always. These pseudoscience clowns had their laws that further went on to be debunked, including Newton's.
They might have realized that it was Galileo, the Tower of Pisa, and the ground that were accelerating up.
What? What? Oh, God, should have known it's in the title. But bloody hellfire. 10th, you can take over from here. You must have something to say, as you pick this.
So the Tower of Pisa has a speed now. That's going to be awesome.
This is one of those videos where you're just going to have so much fun, and then at the end, it's going to be one of those confessions again.
Wait, sorry, Nate.
I'm waiting. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, can this top the atomic double clocked squirrel? Is it going to tie?
As it stands,
is it going to top that?
Well,
It's actually nuttier than that chocolate.
nuttier than that chocolate.
Awesome.
Okay. We've got a picture of the Tower of Pisa, Leaning Tower of Pisa, right, which you may or may not be familiar with, but it looks like a rocket in this picture from above. So they've just told you that the ground's moving up, and then they've got like a rocket-esque Tower of Pisa, looking beautiful. I must admit, they've just cleaned it in this imagery.
Along.
Or is that? Oh no, it's CGI.
This is Dialect with The Sky is Falling Up.
Well, they'll really convince you of anything if you're a heliocentrist, won't they? The sky is falling up. Okay. See, for me, the sky would just be the gas that's surrounding us, because I don't know why there's a blue bit or a black bit, other than the sun's appearance and disappearance. But beyond that, we're talking about the gases that surround us, as far as I'm concerned. So this falls in line with just describing what gases do. Now, gases do move up from ground level. they disperse into the availability of volume. But when I say they move up and disperse in an upward direction based on their origins being at the ground, gas behaviour is such that it moves in all directions. Yeah, hence if it's come out of the ground, it can't go down. That's not a direction available to it. It comes out and goes up and spreads through the gaps in the other gases. But ultimately, if it hits one, it can still go equally down as much as up. Hence, diffusion into other gases can take a certain period of time. This is where our fundamentalist brothers on the anti-flat earth side will tell us that gas is pooling at the bottom of something. It's like, no, it's not. It's just dispersing and there's a high concentration of it. But anyway, that's what I see as the sky. So the notion, this immediate stance that the video is premised on, is just so flawed. Anybody got anything to add on that before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of what he's got to say about the sky falling up?
Yeah, but he's not also
Falling
he's
up
not just
is
talking
an
about
oxymoron.
the sky.
Oh, is that
Sorry.
Raymond?
Go ahead, man.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying the fact that even in the title it says the sky is falling up. It's an oxymoron, right?
Yeah, ludicrous. What is it you said, Chocolate?
Can we reiterate that this is heliocentric nonsense? It's not
Yes.
flat earthers talking about things going up. This is you guys, Globers, who believe what this guy is saying.
Also, you would feel acceleration. If you were accelerating upwards, you would feel it. Your body's designed to feel acceleration.
Ordinary intuition from our everyday experience tells us that things fall down.
What, like helium balloons, clouds? That's what my intuition tells me. I'm looking at a cloud right now. You know, it had to be in a puddle on the ground, evaporate into gas, and then reform or go through a phase change for me to be able to see it in a cloud. So what? That's my intuition telling me that things fall down? You're premising this on your gravitational bias, it seems.
Apples, water,
helium balloons, clouds.
Sometimes people.
Sometimes farts.
So naturally, when we attempt to
shows a load of trees, what are they producing? Are they producing gases by any chance? What about all the clouds in the background? Why are you showing us gas-producing plants and clouds in the next image? What the hell? Do the bull speak much? Why are you showing this?
describe the laws of nature at a place like the surface of the Earth, we try first and foremost to fit those laws to such intuitions.
I've got Anthony calling me on Skype. What's he doing? I don't know. Middle of a live show, Anthony, if you can hear this.
Doesn't he know the rules?
Someone share the link with him if he wants to join.
Call me.
Yeah, can you someone share the link with Anthony?
I got it.
Thank you.
I got it.
And indeed, this is exactly what Newton did in attributing the falling of everyday objects
like clouds and helium balloons
to the universal force of gravity.
Sorry, well, if things are going up, then how is there a universal force of down? I just contradicted you with several examples, two of which were shown in your own imagery.
But sometimes ordinary intuition is...
Why have we got a CGI picture of Earth from space, given that this is a heliocentric premised video? Shouldn't we have some real photos? Why don't we ever have any real photos from a sky vacuum second law of thermodynamics violation? That's my subtle way of dropping in the housekeeping question, by the way.
Why would he speak? Why would he speak about intuition when just describing what we see and experience? Why would we need intuition for such a thing? The law is just describing what happens all the time. You don't need intuition for that.
Exactly. What perceived intuition would we ever require to describe or understand the description of something that occurs always?
Is a pretty bad guide.
Go on.
Is he showing a picture of the Earth as a sphere where the horizon curves around to meet itself and create a ball?
Yes, he is.
Is the horizon Earth curve?
No, we've debunked that. So if the Earth was a sphere with a radius of 3959, as is alluded to in this imagery, then every distance to the horizon, which is claimed to be blocking the sun in this imagery, would be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, and the distance to the horizon in the black swan is beyond the geometric limitations of an Earth hill horizon that blocks the sun in this image. Therefore, the Earth is not a sphere, and the horizon is not Earth curved to block a sun, as is alluded to in this imagery. Nice one. Getting the housekeeping questions in there, Eli. You proud? He's obviously gone home. His job's done.
And it can take a little deeper reasoning to sort the truth out.
Reasoning? No. When you describe things, you just describe them. You know, they're really eloquently described in the laws of nature.
Take the concept of time, for instance.
Really? We're going to accurately describe it as conceptual to start off with. Man, you're flying in the face of the guy yesterday in La La Land with his imaginary dimensions. Just straight off the bat, it's a concept. Wow, first thing we've agreed on.
Classical physics defined time as a mathematical absolute, doing so because this was in keeping with everyday intuition.
Okay? It doesn't matter how it's defined or described. This concept, as you accurately depicted it with the word on screen. Does it matter? Does it affect it? Does the consensus have any alteration on it? No. Is this what's on screen now, Big Ben? Is this time? No. No, definitely not. No, this is a man trying to describe time, which is a concept with gears and mechanisms. So we can track things that move in the sky, the passage of night and day, and things of that nature with a not that great concept.
But some philosophers weren't happy with the assumption that all clocks everywhere must tick at the same rate.
Sorry, what a minute ago we were talking about time and its concept. Now we're talking about how clocks tick. So has anybody picked up on the fact that they've now had a subtle bait and switch? Go on.
I was going to say that's the okie doke. Let's go from talking about the concept to the actual technicality of the device we're talking about.
Just notice that he's just said that some philosophers were not happy with the thought that all clocks must tick at the same rate. Philosophers being the key word, because like philosophy is basically another word for pseudoscience, because you can philosophize about anything. But if you're going to philosophize about something, then is that science or is that just ideas, spooky ideas at a distance? Because that's all it really is, philosophy.
Well, it's worse because it's spooky ideas at a distance about technology and how it functions. How does a clock tick? Well, it's based on how a man made it. So is this a natural phenomena for us to put it through the scientific method? No, we're talking about technology, clocks. But he's subtly juxtaposed time, a concept, with clocks, a technology. Now we're going to be talking about how the technology will presumably move through a different rate in space and time, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? But we're talking about technology now. We're not talking about science or philosophy. We're talking about the philosophy of technology.
And they asked that an
Yeah?
Didn't philosophers come up with the scientific method, though?
They did. They say that's relevant, but yes.
All right, so let's not lump them all in there then. Because they did come up with something good.
Lump them all in there. So you've reified the empirical method developed by philosophers. That doesn't mean that they're in any way tied to the scientific method because they're philosophers and their forefathers may have developed the scientific method. So what? The method is the empirical bit. The process of the method is what gives you the empiricism. The development of the process is, in this instance, not only inconsequential.
Yeah, let's just remember that a philosopher is the antithesis of an empiricist. So on the one hand, I'm an empiricist. I like to see stuff, touch it, feel it, know how it is, behaves, touch it, smells and all that. That's empiricism. But philosophers, they're the people that talk about unicorn farts because they can describe it, but there is no empiricism to it. So philosophy is the antithesis of empiricism.
Right.
And,
La La
and
Land
if what
descriptions.
Neil is saying is true, then if philosophers came up with, let's say they came up with the scientific method, well, then they understood that. They understood the difference between empiricism and philosophy. Otherwise, they just continue to philosophize and not come up with the scientific method at all. They wouldn't need it.
Okay, the scientific method, just to break it down in as quick a method as I can now, so that we understand what we're talking about when we say we want science for this stuff and criticise it for not being science. Scientific method is as follows. Observe a natural phenomena. That's something in nature that's occurring that you want to know why it's occurring. So you see something happen and go, why did that happen? That's first step. Second step is to formulate a prediction of what caused it by supposing what you think caused it. Now, what you think caused it, in scientific terminology, is an independent variable. That which you assume causes the effect, and you will vary to see if it causes the effect. Now, when you vary it to see if it causes it, that's called an experiment. Now, upon varying what you thought caused the effect to see if it did cause the effect, you have one of two outcomes. Either it causes the effect, or it does not cause the effect. Now, in the prediction, you've got both of those already covered. And I'm going to give you the logic, which is what the philosophers came up with. The empirical logic behind the method. If A, that's your presumed cause, thing you think causes the effect you're studying, then B, the effect you're studying. So in the experiment, what I described as you varying presumed cause A to see if it causes effect B. And if it does, you've validated a prediction. Your prediction being if A, then B. Now, also in the hypothesis is the antithesis of that prediction. If A, not B. So they sit alongside, parallel with one another in the prediction. It's called an alternative hypothesis, if A, then B, and a null hypothesis. Null being zero difference result. I.e. you vary A and get zero difference. You don't cause B. A null validation. And I use my words carefully. You validate that A doesn't cause B. You prove that A is not the cause of B. So in so doing, upon experimentation, you either validate your alternative hypothesis, that's to say you prove your alternative, A cause B, or you validate, that's prove, your null hypothesis, A did not cause B. So if A, then B, and alongside it, if A, not B, is the prediction, otherwise known as a scientific prediction, that an experiment is based on. AKA, an experiment is the actualization of that prediction. Now, that is the empirical method developed by philosophers. Notice that in my description of that method, no mention or credit was given to any philosophers, because there wasn't a requirement to. The method, standing alone, is empirical and will prove something at the end of the process. Hence, we ask for it, because no matter what you do in the method, you will empirically validate one of the two outcomes, null or alternative. Go ahead, whoever.
Just by footnote, because it's empirical, it means that there's no maths in it. You won't find maths in this anywhere. Why? Because maths is not, it's not part of experiment. Yeah, you might use it to make your prediction in terms of quantifying how much you think that the effect might be, but there is no maths in here. So when it comes to maths and science, it's not in it.
It's logic based. If A then B, or if A not B, that's not maths, that's logic. Anyway.
It's qualitative, not quantitative.
Yeah, after the fact, once you figure out what causes B to happen, so once you've got the actual cause of B, you vary A and it causes B. Once you know what that is, then, and we discussed this earlier, I can't remember if it was in the pre-show, then you can move forward and start quantifying how much of A or how much reaction in B. But if you've got the incorrect cause of the effect, so A does not cause B, what are you going to quantify? How much it doesn't cause it? You know, you've got to first actually have the cause of the effect. And in that process of varying something that's real, your presumed cause, in the hypothesis, and capable of actual variation by you, the researcher, when you're doing that, you're physically manipulating something in physical terms. That's why it's called physics. Yeah? Now, that's not mathematics. You're not in a conceptual realm of numbers describing things. You're physically manipulating that which you assume will gleam an effect that you're studying. You want to cause and induce the effect you're studying. Because once you do, you've caused it with the thing you varied. Physics, that's the physical, the study of the physical and natural world. Exclusively what we're dealing with here, and exclusively what is being claimed by the likes of astrophysicists and Newtonian and Einsteinian gravity. These are things that are claimed to be in our physical realm. Therefore, the purview of physics, not maths.
Empirical operative definition be instead given to the concept of time.
Who cares? It doesn't matter how you define it.
That is, they demanded that clocks and time be defined via an experiment, which...
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Clocks and time being defined by experimentation. This should be interesting, because we know a couple.
Could actually be physically carried out, rather than assumed via a mathematical abstraction.
No. Step one of the scientific method is observe natural phenomena. What's the phenomena we're observing here? What's going on? Why aren't we being shown something occurring in nature that we want to know the cause of? We're asking a question about whether or not time and / or clocks are going to be defined in a certain way.
After Einstein provided exactly the specifications for such an operative definition of time,
he provided specifications for a definition. Who cares?
In his 1905 land...
Go on, John.
That's nonsensical. Like, a definition is just a definition. Like, specifications are the definition. I don't see where he's going with that.
I want to fax you through the blueprint for the definition.
Landmark paper,
Word nonsense.
the theory of special relativity was born.
It's not a theory. So a theory, to expand on what we just talked about with scientific validity being offered to a cause and effect relationship that's been supposed and then validated through systematic experimentation or hypothesis tests. Once that's been validated, i.e. A cause B, you can then form a theory. In scientific vernacular, that's what a theory is. Now, he's using scientific words, so I feel no guilt, and knowing full well what this subject is, to call foul. No, this isn't a theory.
And in consequence, time was shown to be a...
Really? See, I just asked where it was being shown as a natural phenomenon. Now he's just telling you with 2 clocks on screen that time's been shown. You can't show time. Show me a bag of time. Did I see it? Was it on screen? Is this time on screen? No, it's a couple of clocks. Notice how we had a hourglass, another form of clock, and a clock to describe what time versus and or clocks were. Now we've been shown time. You haven't been shown time, ladies and gentlemen. He's just lied to you.
A rather extraordinary counterintuitive phenomenon.
Phenomenon is something occurring in nature. Let's see if that's what gets shown in the next 20 seconds.
Likewise, applying an operative...
Oh, he just showed it. He didn't say it. He showed 2 moving clocks, and it just said on screen, moving clocks. Hands up, all of you in the audience, Discord panel or G+ panel, who have seen clocks flying.
No.
definition to the
squirrels.
I mean, is clocks flying a natural phenomena?
Well, he's attempting to reify the clock into time. That's what he's trying to do.
And
you know, like if I change the meaning of the word love into a heart and carry a heart to the top of the hill, did I just carry love to the top of the hill?
No.
Nonsense.
Likewise, love is just a concept. It's not a heart. It's not a box of chocolates. It's not a journey to the top of the hill. It's not a marriage proposal. It's conceptual. A bit like time or freedom.
Concept of length shows that space itself does not conform to our everyday intuitions.
Space, for me, is the 3-dimensional realm that I find myself within. You're telling me that that 3-dimensional realm that I find myself doesn't seem to make sense? I'm pretty sure I'm quite happy the way I am in my 3-dimensional reality with everything making sense. All seems perfectly reasonable, other than the lies we get told, and here we are dissecting those stupid, nonsensical lies that make no sense. My world around me, though, seems fine. I'm at far more ease with the world around me since becoming a flat earther, if I'm honest. You know, things are generally less stressful in terms of my world. Because before flat earth, my world was something to be concerned about in terms of the stress level that it might provide me with, or the scary nature of it itself, or the bleak absurdity of it.
Nathan. Nathan, let me give a clue. Every time he says general intuition, start marking how many times he says he's going to revisit it at the end. And the general intuition is through our senses, what we see with our eyes, what we feel. He's saying all this in purpose. He's setting us up for something. Just remember that. Keep going.
But what happens if we apply an operative definition to the concept of motion?
He's asking, what happens if we apply, sounds like something physical, a definition? You mean if we talk about it for a bit? What will happen in physical terms, in terms of the thing that we're describing or defining? What will happen? Absolutely nothing. We could sit around all day doing that, and literally nothing in our physical realm would have any effect on it. It just wouldn't make any difference whatsoever.
Specifically, acceleration. Indeed, not long after developing special relativity, Einstein himself considered this question.
What question?
The context of asking whether a man falling off a building could measure his own weight.
What? If a man falling off a building can measure his own weight? So what, like if he jumps off with a set of scales? Anybody got anything to
Too
say
bad
on
he
this?
never tried it out.
Maybe this is why the anti-flat earthers tell us to jump off buildings. Because their own rhetoric gives them examples like this, plants the idea subliminally in their mind that they should be worried about how much they weigh on a bathroom scale when they jump off a building. You know, that this is something that should be pondered like Einstein pondered it. I mean...
why would Einstein be pondering that? What's the point of this?
Well, it turns out there are a number of operative definitions you can give to accelerated motion. And indeed, you can apply them right here at the surface of the Earth.
Okay, and?
But only if...
Come on.
Just say, I think he's about to try and equivocate between a force of gravity and general relativity. I could be wrong.
We'll see.
If you're ready
What
to
the hell
accept...
is this video? I'm looking at it like, seriously? You're just gonna show somebody just jumping off a building, not a parachute on their back or anything. Okay.
That's what I said. It's like, we hear it in the very, very negative anti-flat earth realm. But then when you see that some of the garbage that you very keen anti-flat earth believer goes and looks for and will find, we know the nonsense reasonably well, or very well. And this is the nonsense, right? That's why we're reacting to it. But when you think about it, if you were looking for affirmation bias, and part of your gravy train of affirmation bias for your heliocentric religion literally contained examples where they're talking about jumping off buildings, dropping things from great heights, I don't know, just kind of plants a bad seed, maybe, especially as we get told to not breed and jump off buildings.
Their astounding implications.
Releases helium balloon, looks at cloud.
I don't know. Jumping off buildings usually has some pretty heavy implications, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it can really ruin your day.
Don't release that helium balloon, Nathan. The implications.
I think they're trying to say that because if you jumped off a building with a scale and tried to put it under your feet, it wouldn't register a weight. Therefore, you are weightless.
Therefore, we don't know how heavy the implications are.
No, I think you're right, John. That's where this does go in terms of 1G. So as a gravitational force, without moving, just sat in your chair, you have 1g in the heliocentric model. What does that mean? Well, you're in fall arrest. You're not moving anywhere, right? And there's something more dense than you between any void that might be below you. Not that I'm suggesting there's any void, but there might be. And you'd have the same effect, right? Fall arrest. Anyway, what they're trying to do is take that non-movement, non-directional instance where you're physically not moving at all and ascribe it a forceful vector with 1 attached to it. So what happens when you then move that boundary from what is technically 0, fall arrest, to 1g? Well, it means that when you move up the scale, you get to 0. Well, what's that? Well, that's when you're falling. So 0g, well, that's when you're falling around Earth, right? The gravitational assumption of an orbital motion. That's what we're talking about. But that's 0 on the scale, isn't it? 0g, we're all familiar with. What does that mean? It means they've readjusted the scale so that when something's falling, it's suddenly not got any weight. Oh yeah, what's the other word for it? Weightless. Oh, you're falling at a massive rate. No, just weightless. Right? Meaning that because they've moved the scale, you've got a force that can be ascribed with a value of 1 to doing nothing.
Yeah, but it's totally faulty. That question that they ask is totally faulty. And when I've posed this to several of them, they kind of get very stumped. If you're falling, it means that you have a downward vector. And what causes a downward vector force? Weight, which is whatever you weigh within that medium, whatever you can be weighed as being within that medium. That's the reason why you're going down.
Careful, Mr. Step. So long as you put into disequilibrium first. Generally speaking, things regardless of their weight will be in equilibrium, unless you force them out of it. Like taking a set of balls up to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, just as an example. Obviously, you've got to force them into disequilibrium to claim down if they're more dense than the air they displace, in this example you're giving. But that's from a disequilibrium.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Like, as I said, the medium, but the point being is that they want to claim you're now weightless. But if you are weightless, you wouldn't be going down. That's the point.
Exactly.
Like
it's fall arrest, isn't it? So the weight is gonna come back extra. And that's how you flatten at the bottom.
It's 1 when you stop.
Yep.
It's 0 when you're falling. And Brian's point is to say that description of weightlessness is because, you've suddenly got no weight when you're falling? No, the only reason you are falling is because you're more dense than the air that you're in. Now, you can call that weight, Fundy, if you like, because that's what you'd call it. But it doesn't alter the fact that you're in disequilibrium to begin with to have this displacement, because you're more dense than the medium.
Yeah, but remember the name of this video, right? The sky is falling up. So I'm sure at some point he's going to try to conclude with how this description of somebody falling down through the air is actually going upwards. So that should be fun.
And whilst we're remembering the name of the video, the sky is falling up, how does that actually work on a ball? Because if Sydney in Australia is falling, the sky's falling up in Australia, and it's also falling up in England, and it's also falling up in America. The only way you can interpret that if we're on a ball is that the ball is infinitely getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, because you can't have both of them, like the sky falling up in both instances, because that's a total paradox. You can't do that. So either, don't forget, Einstein's theory of general relativity is defined. It is an observation-based test, isn't it? It's an observation that things appear to move when they're not actually moving. That's a bit of refraction, a little bit of bendy light, right? But they talk about it in this context to confuse the shit out of you. And the sky's not falling up. That's got nothing to do with what actually the theory of general relativity says. What they're doing is they're applying the equivalence principle to obfuscate the actual point that Einstein claims, which is that light bends caused by mass. That's all it is. But this is all to confuse the shit out of everybody, so nobody knows what gravity is. And they revert back to the default position that it's a force, even though it's not been a force since World War II. It's a joke. World War One.
Right.
But without the force, you can't model anything. So
two things.
It's just a bunch of blabbering.
Before you all buy into Anthony, who has been led nicely in terms of this sky falling up and the heliocentric assertions and the byproducts of Australian down being our antipodal up. Well, yeah, but you're into begging the question about how the sphere Earth would work with this. That's the main purpose of it making sense or otherwise, that you can argue about how it makes sense or doesn't within the heliocentric model. Now, contextually, we're there anyway, but Anthony's absolutely spot on. Obviously, you're going to be prefacing it with your understanding of the heliocentric model. Therefore, it's purely designed to confuse when you've got a non-force force of gravity in the current ideal world of non-phenomena. So how do you combat this? What's the shortcut? As opposed to what we're about to launch into, which is why I've stopped Arwin and Anthony, which is you can discuss it in the heliocentric nonsense and how it doesn't work within the model. But the shortcut is much, 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 much better. Which is to say that what's the phenomena being studied? Why do we ask for scientific evidence on a daily basis? Well, it's because there's a methodology that has a first step of observation of natural phenomena. Well, he's made at least 2 minutes worth of disclaimers about how this is conceptual and mathematical and not physical. So therefore, what's the natural phenomena being observed? Before we get into the problems within the heliocentric assertion, it's like, no, let's just get to the science of it. What were you observing happen to make this assertion? And then what did you put in your hypothesis?
Falling.
Go on.
Well, things falling. That's what the whole premise
looks
is.
Looks at cloud, releases helium balloon. Yeah. This was debunked 107 years ago, right? It was superseded for a reason. Why? Well, because it doesn't comport with reality. It was described, and this guy described it as a law, like a law of nature always happens. What, gas go down, go boom, boom? 9.8 meters per second squared? No. Doesn't comport with reality. Definitely not a law of nature.
Can I point out again, like I pointed out before real quick, and I said, remember, heliocentrist, this is your model. This is somebody on your side describing your shit, right? But again, remember the straw man that we always have thrown at us. The straw man model of a disc flying upwards at 9.8 meters per second squared. Like, remember, that's thrown on us. None of us claim that. But here's your man, Mr. Heliocentric model guy, who's describing your model in that way. So let's be aware of that before you come at us with, oh, you live on a disc that's flying upwards. That's you. Okay? Thanks.
As it is written in his Principia Naturalis, Newton's first law states that every body perseveres in its state of rest or of uniform motion in a right line, unless it is compelled to change that state by forces impressed thereupon.
You want to comment on this, Anthony, as you're here?
Yeah, I'm watching this, yeah.
Now, in conjunction with Newton's second law, which relates force to acceleration.
Back to John's question. What's the M? F equals ma, right? What's M?
It's supposed to be mass.
Want to define it?
Just let me just preface what's about to happen before you go on, Nathan. Just
okay.
Don't press play. Okay. What he's going to do now, he's going to apply Newton's second law of motion, which is F equals ma. And he's going to use the calculation to then calculate forces into existence. So because he sees something accelerate, he's then going to calculate F equals ma into existence and then say there's a force there, right? But we know that gravity is not a force. We've been told that numerous times. Even people like Fight the Flat Earth reluctantly accept that it's not a force. So what is the purpose of calculating a force when it isn't a force in the first place? That's the paradox.
It's Newtonian mechanics. I mean, you're kind of strawmanning. He's engaging in Newtonian mechanics. So we can't use that. It's supposed to be an explanation for gravity. Well, there isn't any.
I think what I was trying to say is this is coming from a gravitational perspective that's modern. Therefore, I think even though you're right, Anthony, he's about to take this apart. So I'm sure you're right, and you've called it, but I think you might find that he's actually going to take the opposite view. We'll see. I don't know either, to be honest, but we'll see, Arwin. You might be right.
Just to correct Darwin, I'm not straw manning. I'm actually preempting what he's about to say. I've not seen this video, so I am straw manning if I knew about it, but I've not seen it, so I'm preempting what he's about to say.
That's
Nathan's saying it's not going to be that.
We get that. We get that.
Well, my point
we
is,
get that. We get that. You're going to ruin the flow. Let's just discuss this point for 10 straight minutes. Why not? No?
Oh, okay,
yeah? We all good to move on?
This implies an obvious way to detect true motion by measuring whether a body deviates from rectilinear uniform motion.
So it's just showing a ball being dropped. All right. About a puddle evaporating or a helium balloon going up. I mean, if you're going to use a ball, why not use a helium balloon? Would it have the same motion? I don't think so. Seems like you're ignoring quite a lot of the way the world works to make this example.
Let's apply this to an observer on a rocket ship.
Why? There are no rocket ships. What, in a sky vacuum? Is there any evidence that the sky is a vacuum? An area of volume for gas to fill?
It needs to get into space first, so to slip that in that fictional medium in order for you to accidentally wander into La La Land, into the Narnia closet.
Nathan, we experience gas pressure, so the sky cannot be a vacuum.
So what's this example? Should I just start talking about Narnia? If we're in Narnia, then Aslan will, whatever I then make up. It's like, well, why would we transition to this CGI image of a rocket ship in a place that isn't real? We don't care what Aslan does in Narnia.
Who, say, is unaware of their state of motion.
So we're in a La La Land where people don't know which direction they're travelling, even though our bodies are acutely designed to know exactly that. I don't know, I really don't buy this. I'm not in Narnia. I'm in space. And my body knows when I'm moving.
To try to determine it, they toss an object off of themselves.
I've got an inner ear. What do you mean? It's like these canals that have got little liquid in them.
Nah, you can't trust those.
Can I not? They've stopped me falling over. Well, that's not true. Moving on.
What is that thing in that chair? Oh
it's been a year, right? And I'll just tell the audience, right? The reason I've just stopped myself saying that, I was like, my inner ear stopped me falling over. For some reason, in the middle of the night, I woke up in pain and blood, right? For no apparent reason. I think I got up to go to the loo or something, right? But for the last 12 straight months, I've been in agony. I'm still not fixed. I've got broken ribs. And every time I do anything with one of my children, they snap again. So I'm like, oh, it's all right. I'm all healed. Pick up a child. Snap. And you're like, I'm in agony again. This process has continued for 6 straight months because my inner ear didn't work properly. Or I can only assume that's the case. Like I say, I remember waking up in pain. Anyway, moving on.
If this object floats away with uniform motion...
Why would it do that? So, sorry. A helium balloon will do that on the ground. I didn't have to go to space to have an example, but suddenly you've got things that were falling through the air that surrounds all of us always. You've taken us to a place that doesn't have any air in what, a presupposed orbital motion where you're falling around a spherical surface and subsequently are accelerating without noticing. And then if you release your wristwatch, which is definitely a solid, in the trapped medium of air in the spaceship in space, this is absurd.
Then from Newton's first law...
Why are we applying Newton's first law? Well, these have all been debunked.
They can deduce that the frame of the rocket ship is inertial.
Really? Why? We're in Narnia. With somebody who's hypothetically not realising that they're moving, releasing a solid into a gas as they're falling. What?
Oh, the rocket would be in the inertial reference frame.
Yeah, we'll put that in our pocket. I don't know if we'll get to any Coriolis violations. We'll see. But yes,
I need to get a point in because you keep saying this, right? Newtonian gravity, yeah, debunked. Absolutely, gas doesn't go down, go boom boom. But the rest of Newtonian mechanics, and even with the issues of it uses mass in its notification and all that, I mean, it still does stand mechanically.
The laws of motion.
That's why they've never been actually replaced as laws of motions as to how things work with forces and all that.
No, they were not right.
What do you mean they were not right?
If you're applying if you're applying an ambiguity to a mathematical formula, you haven't done anything except applied an ambiguity to a mathematical formula. It doesn't make it right.
Yeah, but it does describe how solids, at least, and liquids, basically how forces work with them, how it does balance out. You can pre-calculate, and then using just calculations, in this case, kind of nerdy, really predict the pathway of like an object moving in a course.
Like Newton's.
Right?
So
like Newton's.
You've equivocated objects and forces with mass now.
Correct. And he's also done it.
And
you've also done it in a hyperspecific medium with a hyperspecific relation to the medium. So is that a law of nature? Or do I just need to go underwater to violate it? Ergo, not a law of nature. They were not right.
They were not laws of nature. I totally agree. And gravity.
So the laws of Newton were not right. Can we move on?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that everything about it
means they weren't
wrong.
right. Can we move on?
Yeah.
Not everything about it was wrong.
Weren't right, but is right also. Not wrong. Yeah, Owen, they weren't right. They weren't laws.
Everything about it was wrong. That's right. Yes.
Here we go again.
Thank you just for disturbing the flow of this for absolutely no reason whatsoever, Owen.
I.e. that it's at rest or moving with...
I'll make sure to make shows about it again and again, as I have in the past, as you keep doing this.
Please.
Right, they're false. They're false. They were not right. False.
It does work the way it is described. It's just not a law of nature, and it doesn't apply to gases, and gravity is not real. The rest of it works.
Oh, great. Let's move on.
Only when you equivocate.
Okay. So you destroyed my whole point when I was trying to say how this guy just initiated that a rocket would be in the inertial reference frame. So he might want to have a talk with Simon Dan, who said the reference frames are ruined. He might have one to talk with this guy.
Or Becky. Thanks. Hey, Becky, this dude saying Tom Cruise inertial reference frame. Like, you said he was tethered. What gives, Becky? How is it that you're contradicting this guy's description in La La Land, Narnia, space? You know, I mean, it's not real in either event, but you're violating his description. Why would Becky be so stupid?
Constant velocity. This is like what you see with astronauts in zero-gravity environments.
They're not in zero-G, because they're claimed to be in a sky vacuum in a presupposed orbital motion, falling around the sphere Earth. Now, we've debunked every single aspect of that, right? Now, if you've got, Holmes with the simplest explanation being the most probable one, well, what is this on screen? This is men in a studio. This is a set. Now, yeah, you can get the behind-scenes footage for Gravity, and you can see Sandra Bullock doing this, where there's no ceiling. But for this, they've CGI'd in a ceiling, so you can't see the high wire when they pretend to float around in a sky vacuum, aka Narnia. There is no sky vacuum. There is no falling around a sphere Earth. This is a set. It's on television. You're not experiencing this, nor will you ever experience this. It's not experienceable because it's in an orbital motion in a sky vacuum. Now, the gas that all these guys are breathing claim to be contained by this spaceship. Why would they need that? Right? Below them, there's gas just chilling out, man. It's chilling out next to the vacuum that they're in. Why do they need containment and the Earth doesn't? Right? Total nonsense.
Yep.
Quick shout out to Twad Wazzle. He says, at 24 months, I'm cancelling membership. Right, he's been a member for 23 months. Don't exactly know what that means. But thank you very much for your support. Also, Twad Wazzle. To become a Patreon. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
I would say it is kind of funny, right? Now that you mention it, like every time the astronauts suit up, they literally prove that gas pressure requires a container.
My favourite shots are the ones where they're in a spacesuit looking down at Earth. Like, so you're looking down at clouds, and the clouds aren't following you into this sky vacuum, but you need to protect yourself from it with a spacesuit. Yeah, they're literally laughing at you people. If you think the space is real, they're literally laughing in your face. While they show you gas pressure not expanding into the area of volume so scary that they need a spacesuit to stop their gas locally not going into the vacuum, But all of the gas in the known existence that we actually experience, that doesn't go into the vacuum. Gets to the Kármán line and just chills out. It violates natural law. It just says, I'm not going any higher. I'm going to turn around and go back again. I'm not going to hit something. I mean, what am I? Supposed to press on something? Being pressure and all? No, I'm not going to press on something. I'm just going to turn around and go back. Yeah? Fuck natural law. I burn my bra in defiance.
Pretty much.
Environments when they're floating around looking all cool and what.
So they've got high wire. They're on harnesses. This is a thin piece of wire. You know, I know what a trapeze is. I've done a performing arts course. I know a high wire when I see one. Right? This is all this is. Men and women wearing harnesses with very thin wires with a CGI'd roof. If you want to see how it's done, go and watch Dilly Gill. Dillygil. Dilly Gill. Go and check him out. What he shows is how when they do the live link-ups, they've got two footage cameras. One slightly above the other. One taking crap images that doesn't show the ceiling, that's live, so they can have a conversation on their high wire where they do only basic moving, bobbing up and down. And then they've got the better quality footage that does include the ceiling that's CGI'd in afterwards, so you can't see the wires. That's it. It's just a magic trick. You're being hoodwinked with props and sets and CGI and wires. That's all this is. You cannot fly. You are not Superman. There is no space to fly in, like there is no Aslan in Narnia.
But not. Now, if our observer tosses the object off themselves and it instead falls to the ground, then Newton's laws now imply that a force must be involved.
But only if it falls to the ground. So, what about a helium balloon? What about a cloud? What about all the gas itself that he's surrounded by? Is that all going down? Is he sat in a pool of gas? Because otherwise, everything around him, surrounding him, which has got mass, according to your descriptions of it, is not going down or up. It's moving in all directions, violating this principle at its core.
One that either accelerated the object to the ground...
What, the air? Through the air? The air that's trapped moving around in orbital motion? No, that doesn't happen.
Or one that accelerated the ground to the object.
Right, so if we're falling in orbital motion, then you're saying that something will be pushed up. Like if you had some loose change come out of your pocket on one of those merry-go-round things that goes up and down. If you're moving up towards the coin after it comes out of your pocket, then the ground that you're attached to, in this case, I forgot what the name of it is, the chair thing that goes round and round, then you're moving up towards it. Right, but if
Wurlitzer.
Wurlitzer. No. I'm talking about ones that go, it's in the vertical axis. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, he's saying that if you've got an accelerative motion, in this case, the accelerative motion that's being described is an orbital motion. So they're constantly in perpetual falling. So therefore, the watch will come towards the ground because the ground's coming towards it as it falls in an orbital motion. That's the claim.
Well, hold on a sec. Is he asserting that Einsteinian is a force now? Because that's wrong. If he's saying that the ground is being forced up, that's not how it's described.
No, that's not how he's described it. I'm only detailing how this could happen in his description. For the ground to be moving up, it would have to be in an orbital motion, i.e. the ground's moving. Why? Because we're in a spaceship. Why? Because we're in a presupposed orbital motion not detailed by him, but me.
If this observer is equipped with sufficient...
Can I just say?
Yep.
Sorry. They don't ever give any explanation as for why the Earth is claimed to be moving upwards towards the object. It's just that it is. That's what they say.
No,
that's why Einstein...
completely contradicting me. No, He's put us in a spaceship. Now, although he hasn't said it, for the spaceship to be flying and not going away from Earth, in his example, which he showed with a picture, I know you can't see it in G+, which is probably why you're saying this, he's shown us visually where this will take place. Therefore, without him having to say it, there's an automatic orbital motion in place for his example. For the example to work, for the ground to be moving up to the pocket watch.
Sufficient prior knowledge of their system.
Go on.
1 second.
No, that's fine.
But within what they claim, within Einstein's equivalence principle, they don't really give a reason for the Earth moving up towards the object. They just say that there is an upward acceleration, and it's not the object that's accelerating, and that when we think the object is accelerating towards the ground, that's only an optical illusion.
Well, that's not
but
true.
Actually, it's like a Coriolis effect.
The Earth is moving along a geodesic in space-time, according to Einsteinian pseudo-Riemannian four-space geometry. We're moving along a geodesic, the whole Earth.
But don't forget
that doesn't explain that doesn't explain why there is a claim that the Earth is moving up towards the object. That's just a movement along a geodesic. That doesn't explain why the Earth is moving up towards the object.
But let's not lose the context here. When they use the equivalence principle to describe the difference between falling down and being pushed up by the Earth, those two positions are they're not actually what gravity is according to Einstein. Remember, Einstein says it's just a visual effect, but he's describing this equivalence principle so that you can basically get confused into thinking that you can't tell the difference between the two, but it's irrelevant to the point. Remember, Einstein's theory of general relativity is a visual effect. It's light bending caused by mass, but it doesn't have anything to do with Earth moving up and gravity things falling down or whatever. They're just doing that to describe an equivalence principle in the same way that you can equivocate between any other two objects that you want to equivocate between and say, well, an apple and an orange are very similar, and you can equivocate between the two of them for a lot of purposes. But really, we're talking about bananas, and that's what they're doing there. They're making you think about two totally different points and not look at what the actual current position is, that it's a visual effect, and that's all it is. It's nonsense. It's to confuse people.
Yeah, but you're missing it. But how Einstein describes that visual effect is that the Earth is moving up towards the object. His point is that the object is not falling. That's his point. It's just perceived to be falling. So we perceive this as if there was a force of attraction between this and the ground, when in reality, within what he's claiming, the Earth is moving up and the object stays stationary in space.
A quick shout out to Twadwazzle again. Thank you very much for all the super chats. Does this imply apparent deviation of the object? Yeah, that's why he's detailed the reference frames, Twadwazzle. Correct. But we'll come to that on a slightly different tangent when we do get there.
And knows that their object contains.
Should we carry on live? Is this worthy of continuing on the live show, or should we just move it to the after show? Well over live.
Go a little bit more live, and then you can carry on.
Type 1 in the chat if you want us to carry on with this live. Type 2 if you can care less.
No internally acting force.
Pardon?
I gave you a verbal 1.
I said type 1. Type 1. Arwin, you're on
Don't
the call.
type me.
And isn't magnetically attracted to the floor or anything of that sort, meaning that it is a free body. They can rule out the possibility that the object was acted upon by a local force.
What? For it to be in the example, it's got to have a massive amount of energy to put it there. What do you mean not acted on a force? So if you ignore the fact that in this bullshit world of Narnia space sky vacuum, we're in an orbital motion on a spaceship with the gas needing to be protected for this monkey to sit in this pressurized sky vacuum based spaceship falling around Earth. You're telling me that I've got to ignore all of that from the example to claim that no energy's been put into the system? What? What a crock of crap. Just ignore everything and focus solely on the example in this isolated scenario. and ignore all energy that's been put into all systems to get it there. I wouldn't do that even in Narnia, La La Land, hypothetical examples that we have to conceptualise like this is. I can conceptualise them, but I can still call foul on the nonsense that you're describing when you tell me that there's been no energy put into the system. Absurd. The Price of Adams used one of his super chats to say 1. So I think we'll stay live a little bit longer. Pretty much everybody in the chat said 1.
No, literally everybody.
Okay, well, I'm glad. It's nice to know that you're keen for us to do this. Gravity is not my favourite subject. It is a lot of people's on the panel. Arwin, Sleeping Warrior. There's loads of them that love gravity. Me, I don't know. It's all right. As a subject to debunk, I mean.
That leaves a second possibility. That the object never accelerated at all.
Again, we're going to ignore all the preceding accelerative forces that would be used to get it into La La Land orbital motion. Why would we do that? So we can then say that there isn't anything going on. It's just magic. What?
And
right.
rather...
Relative density disequilibrium ceases to be.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. Allegedly, according to them. I mean, I don't think that's actually possible, but that's what they're suggesting.
It's again, like I said with my coin example, although I can't remember the name of the fairground ride. It's like just because you're moving up towards something that's coming down towards you. It's like what if you ignore the forces of the whirly world that you sat on? No. We had to be in that example. No, just focus on you, the seat, and this cubic meter of air around you with the coins in it, and the camera moving with you in the seat. So technically speaking, that's just the only frame of reference that exists. No, just because the camera's attached to this that's supposed to be falling around a sphere Earth at a horrendous rate, having expelled a massive amount of energy to do so. What, I've got to ignore all of that? Just because you're not showing us any windows? In Narnia? Oh, no. Shout out to Skeptic936, who's upgraded his membership. In defiance.
Yeah, but remember, we started all of this with ignoring, right? He started this by ignoring things that go down, things that go up or things that float. He's only talking about things that supposedly go down. So he's the one who started all this ignoring in the first place.
Was the floor of...
Would it not be a bit strange for, let's say, what they claim to be a rocket going off up into... I know that it takes an arc, but for it to escape the Earth, if the Earth is coming up towards it at 9.8 meters per second squared, how fast would it have to be moving?
No. It's supposed to be. That's why I said I disclaimed it for him. It had to make this example. He's got to be in a Narnia sky vacuum in orbital motion. So he's not falling towards the Earth down. He's falling around the Earth in orbital motion. In his example, not that he's disclaimed that.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is, let's say NASA with their claims, they'd have to calculate within the thrust the fact that the Earth is moving up towards the rocket. So when that rocket is trying to take off initially, the Earth is trying to follow it underneath within these claims, within general relativity, within the equivalence principle.
Yes, I see what you mean now. Yes, that's correct.
That's a bit of an ask, isn't it?
Not unless another rocket is taking off antipodally.
Well,
which way is it going? Oh, it's just expanding. This is supposed to be reality.
Do you know what they say? Do you know what they say is the reason why? And I think it's what Einstein said. Pretty sure from his equivalence principle. The reason why that a rocket can take off from Australia and take off from America at the same time, or whatever, or why the Earth can expand in both ways, is because it's trying to get bigger, but space and time is curving in around it as a kind of an anti-expansion.
So net expansion zero? Is that what you're saying?
It's one of those gut belts that fat people wear.
Rocket ship that accelerated up to meet it. Note here that this would give rise to an apparent downward motion of the object, even though...
See? So he's got the ham-handed description of the rocket moving down as the ground moves up. Right?
Its true motion remained a uniform line. At least until it gets hit by the floor. Thus, the observer now has an operative definition for motion.
Anthony, you got anything to pipe up on?
No, I'm just waiting for this authoritative definition for motion. I'm waiting to hear what he says.
Yeah, I just didn't know if he's going to give it now, but I just didn't know if you were going to preemptively say anything about it. Fine.
That is, they have an experiment by which to define whether their frame is accelerating or not.
Shows a picture of a dropped ball. Holds helium balloon, releases helium balloon.
This is the free body test. The observer might also have used an accelerometer in the form of something such as masses attached to a spring.
Why? Shouldn't we be observing a natural phenomena occurring? Isn't that the main idea of science? Of course, this isn't science, is it?
An accelerometer won't work. Accelerometer won't work. Well, it will if you allow for the reality of relative density.
Funny how he brought up three bodies.
He's negated that. He's put it into an orbital motion, hasn't he? He's on a spaceship.
He also said experiment and later said test.
Yeah, test in this context is an experiment also.
Don't they have a problem with three bodies?
In
Einsteinian, don't they call that the three-body problem?
In Einsteinian mathematics, yes.
No, that's not fair. It was Newton that had the problem with three bodies. Einstein's problem was with two bodies, because apparently his calculations cannot be performed with just two bodies, whereas Newton's was able to be performed with two. It was just inaccurate. But when there's a third body with Newton, everything went to shit.
Oh, so what you're saying is if we have more than one body to deal with, then there's a problem automatically based on both aspects?
It's only a mathematical problem, but it does debunk their concept of general relativity.
Yeah, but at least Newtonian's model allowed for the formation of some kind of heliocentric force-based system, right? Of circularity. I mean, Einstein doesn't allow that at all.
You can only calculate one mass at a time. So what Anthony's saying when he called it two-body problem is a problem because you can only calculate the singular one at a time. So what are you going to do if you're going to describe in his equations the mass of Earth and the mass of the moon? Well, you can't do it.
Well, mass doesn't technically exist within Einstein's relativity. He used the word, but it doesn't mean anything. That's why there is a post or a pre-Einstein and a post-Einstein, basically, if you want to see it that way, description of mass. Because mass doesn't exist. The only relevance mass had within what they call Newtonian was the fact that mass is given weight via force of gravity. But once that force of gravity is gone, then mass and weight are not connected in any way, like in that way. So what was mass to Einstein? All you could say is mass curved spacetime. That's it, if you want to use the word mass. But he could say a large body of matter does it too.
It's also because within his conception, within Subrahmanian force space, mass has a specific function within that system. So it's almost like Einstein mass trademark. It's a different mass. I mean, all these different formulas use mass differently, right? So Einstein's invocation of mass is very different from Newton's invocation of mass.
Very important
It's ambiguous. It's nothing.
Very important to realize what Anthony said. This is a math problem.
Would have relied on haptic input from their nervous system, both of which are essentially more sophisticated reformulations of the free body test. Okay, now let's have our observer put such definitions into practice.
So how do you put a definition into practice? Anybody?
Impossible.
Perform an experiment, Nathan.
No, a definition. If I describe something, how can I put my description of something into practice? It's like saying, I'm going to describe something wooden, a table. Put my description of a table into practice, Anthony.
That's the point. You can't put any coffee cups on a description. You can only put them on a real coffee table.
Right.
Yeah, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you, Nathan, if you're going to say that you can't put definitions into practice, because you definitely can.
A definition is how a word is described, the meaning of a word. It's semantics as opposed to physics.
Yeah, but if you're going to convert that word from an adjective, which is describing something, or a definition, which is like defining something, if you're going to make that into a noun, you can definitely do that. It's called noun. It's verifying the noun, isn't it?
It's called a reification fallacy.
No, it's only a reification fallacy if it's conceptual and it cannot be put into practice. You can put a lot of stuff into practice. It's just the stuff that you can't put into practice that becomes reification.
But what are we talking about?
Oh, well, bending of space-time and all these... We're talking about philosophy woo-woo. Science fiction is what we're talking about, but they masquerade it as science. But by definition, if they pretend it's science when it's not actually science, that is pseudoscience. I prefer the phrase blue marble science, because blue marble science is basically a better phrase for pseudoscience, in my opinion. But that's what they're actually doing. They're bringing into reality something that is conceptual, and they're passing it off as science when it isn't science. It's literally woo-woo.
At the surface of the Earth. First, they take a loose object and toss it off themselves.
Releases helium balloon. Looks up at cloud.
What happens?
In my instance, it went up.
Well, just like on the accelerating rocket ship, it
What? When were we on that?
Falls to the ground.
Accelerating rocket ship? Weren't we told to consider that there was no forces or influences?
Next, they use an accelerometer, masses attached to a spring. They notice that the spring compresses.
What, when you attach a load of helium balloons to it? I would have thought it did the opposite.
How do you attach an equivocation? How do you attach an equivocation?
Nathan, I'll bet you they're not.
Hold on, Arwin. Go ahead. Third time's the charm.
How do you attach an equivocation fallacy to a spring?
You can't.
Nathan, I'll bet you that there's never going to be a helium balloon coming up in this video at any point.
Shape clouds, though.
Again, just like on the rocket ship. Next, they use their nervous system to feel their own weight.
Anthony.
Weight?
How do you feel your own weight?
You can't feel your own weight, can you? Your weight is subject to the medium that you're in. So, like, if you're in water, you don't have any perception of weight because you kind of float in the middle, like a bit like an egg. If you have an egg in water, there's no weight there, is there? And you can't feel pressure.
Everything is medium-based.
But there's no downwards acceleration due to gravity at 9.8 meters per second squared, is there? Because you're fucking floating.
Perfect.
So let's be honest. You can't
but he's referencing the senses that sense pressure, and you can derive from how your pressures in your body are sensed as to, like, oh, everything is like I'm standing in the air or I'm sitting, right? Your orientation. Well, so there are senses, but they actually measure pressure, and then your brain arranges that data in order to help you orient.
Nathan, hold on. Go ahead, buddy. I'll go after you.
No, you're going here. Go on, I'll go after.
No, I was driving. I couldn't answer you, Nathan. But when you said you fell, that shows you that, your equilibrium is very important. And it wasn't functioning right. That's why you fell.
Okay, but before we move on with Brian or Alwyn, Anthony's already overcome this. At the end, if Anthony replies to anything you say in the next 25 seconds with, what if I'm floating? Just ask yourself, will that overcome it? Probably.
No. Because in their world, you see, it's a differentiation of their world. Weight is the downward acceleration, isn't it? So if you're going to feel floaty in water, you will feel something different. So I think it's just very poor description rather than being wrong.
It's more than very poor description. It's intentional obfuscation to confuse the listener into thinking woo-woo is somehow credible science. That's all it is. It's not loose. It's worse, Adam.
I just say?
I just love the fact that he pointed out that you could use your nervous system to feel your own weight, but never brought up the vestibular system, which detects motion. And the whole point of this is motion. That's kind of funny.
Oh dear.
That's true statement, Chocolate.
That's kind of eerie, don't you think?
Well, you know what the problem is? You know what the problem is with all this? And this is the point I was going to make a minute ago. Is that every single part of space travel and space exploration, all that started in 1969. And in 1969, they started it showing a force of gravity effect. Now, that means that every single part of space travel, claimed space travel, is directly contradicted by Einstein's relativity. So they need to add in relativity into a situation that they've already concreted into the ground, through a force, if you understand what I mean. Like they've already gone through that force door with space travel starting in 1969, and now they can't go back. They're trying to switch over to the other room, but there's a concrete wall there. They're trying to add in new general relativity and Einsteinian principles, and because they know that the Newtonian principles they were using are false, and they're trying to add in Einsteinian principles, which can't be added in because they started off with Newtonian. So they're like proof that the two do not mix. You know what I mean? Mathematically, this is the proof, because they're trying to add it in and it can't be done.
But they're trying, right?
Oh, indeed. But with that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, joined as a Patreon, smashed the thanks button and all that good stuff. And of course, a massive thank you to today's Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Programming stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!